All right, so get this. We're going to explore witchcraft and folk magic, but from around the world this time.
Ooh, sounds interesting.
Yeah, you've really piqued my curiosity. With all these sources, we've got like YouTube deep dives into these local practices in like all different countries.
Oh, wow.
We even get a little peek inside a South African witchcraft market.
Seriously?
Yeah, so buckle up because today we're going to try to answer this big question. How do different cultures interpret and practice these beliefs?
It's a fantastic question and one that definitely needs like a global perspective to really understand. We're going to be using videos that explore witchcraft in Mexico, Brazil, Bolivia, and South Africa.
Talk about a whirlwind tour.
Right.
I am so ready. I have a feeling we're in for some big surprises along the way. Did you know there might be a connection between witchcraft and sewing needles?
Sewing needles.
Yeah, you heard me right. And wait till you hear about this lost love spoon. It's like straight out of fairy tale, but with a much darker twist.
Intriguing. All right, let's start our journey in Mexico City. There's this National Geographic video that takes us inside the Sonora Witches Market.
Oh, yeah, I saw that one.
This place is just a whirlwind of sights and smells.
That's crazy.
And it's like this huge clash between traditional beliefs and the dominant Catholic religion.
Yeah, it's like stepping into another dimension almost. They've got all this like unsettling stuff for sale. We're talking bat wings, pig tongues, even like pre-made hexes that are ready for burial.
Whoa.
Honestly, it's all a bit spooky.
Yeah.
Even just watching it on video, it's a little freaky.
I can imagine. So it really shows that this stuff isn't just like tourist trinkets, you know?
Yeah.
It represents these really deeply rooted beliefs and practices.
Yeah.
People go to this market looking for solutions, answers, sometimes even revenge. It's a powerful reminder that magic in a lot of cultures isn't just something out of fairy tales. It's part of everyday life.
Right. And speaking of everyday life mixed with the supernatural, this National Geographic piece introduces us to Dr. Zabaleta. He's this anthropologist who had this really chilling firsthand experience with black magic while he was doing field work.
Oh, wow.
And this wasn't just some random observer. This is the guy who studies these practices for a living.
Right.
Yeah.
So what happened?
So he describes becoming physically ill after he saw this black magic ritual.
Really?
And what's super fascinating is how he reflects on the whole experience. He says, the fact where the real or imagined was very real on me.
That's so interesting.
He goes on to say, and of course, an imagined effect or psychologically and emotionally induced effect that produces physiological change is valid and it's real. But I've seen many things that I simply cannot explain.
Wow.
It's like even with all his academic background and stuff, he's still grappling with like the power of belief and how it manifests in really real ways.
Right. It really makes you wonder, where do we draw the line between belief and reality?
Yeah.
Could the power of suggestion, especially in a culture like that, actually cause physical effects? It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Okay, so let's think about the power of belief, but when it's used to cause harm. Our research brought up this disturbing story about this young boy in Brazil. He was found with, get this, 50 sewing needles embedded in his body.
Oh my gosh.
It's awful.
That's terrible.
It's this really disturbing case, and it's shrouded in mystery and speculation. The boy's father thinks it was some kind of black magic ritual.
It's just awful.
It really is. It's a huge reminder that the possibility of harm with these types of practices isn't just theoretical. It can have devastating consequences. It makes me think of like the evil eye, you know, that idea that's in so many cultures around the world.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Just the fact that someone can inflict harm just by looking at you. That's ancient and incredibly widespread.
It is. It shows this like deeply ingrained fear of unseen forces and like how much power they might have over us. You know, whether you believe in the evil eye or not, it has a huge cultural impact.
It does. Okay, so we've talked about some pretty intense stuff. Black magic, hexes, and the potential for harm, like all this bad stuff. Let's shift gears a bit and check out Brazilian folk magic. It gives us a whole different perspective.
Okay, yeah.
One of the YouTube videos you gave me gives this really cool overview of how these practices blend African traditions with Catholicism and indigenous beliefs.
Yeah.
It's so cool. It's like a cultural tapestry that's been woven together over centuries.
That's amazing. And the history behind it is so important. During slavery, enslaved Africans disguised their deities, or orishas, as Catholic saints.
Oh, wow.
It was so they could keep their spiritual practices alive, even with all the oppression. This merging of different religions is called syncretism, and it shows how adaptable and resilient culture can be.
It's almost like a secret code, a way to keep their traditions alive, even when facing such horrible conditions. And over time, it developed into distinct religions like Candomblé and Umbanda, and even the folk magic practices we see today. It's amazing how something born out of such a terrible period could become something so vibrant.
You're right. And it's amazing how seamlessly these practices are part of daily life in Brazil, like taking salt baths for spiritual cleansing or lighting candles for certain intentions.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
These aren't just rituals, they're part of the culture.
Right. It's like magic isn't something separate or hidden. It's just there in their world.
Exactly. It's normalized. It's accessible for everyone. It shows this deep connection to the spiritual world that just seems to be everywhere in Brazilian culture.
Now, get ready for this next one. One of the sources is this VC interview with this Bolivian brujo, which basically means witch doctor who, get this, specializes in black magic.
Oh.
He works with this powerful entity called the Tio that's often used in curses. Talk about a wild ride. This guy's story is nuts.
Yeah.
He started with white magic, but then decided to work with these darker forces.
It just shows you that magic, like a lot of human experiences, exists on a spectrum. What's good or bad is really subjective and depends a lot on the cultural context and what someone intends to do. It also highlights the fact that a lot of practitioners change how they understand and practice magic over time.
And the services he offers are like something out of a movie. Love spells, revenge spells. He even says he has spells that can make people sick or even die.
Oh, my.
It's definitely unsettling, but it's also super intriguing.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even though magic can be used for healing and empowerment, it can also be used for really bad things. The potential for harm is always there. You have to be careful and aware when you're dealing with this kind of stuff.
You do. Speaking of unsettling and intriguing, this brujo also uses these things called yatitas. Yeah, they're human skulls, believe it or not, and they're supposed to offer protection and grant favors. He even gives them names and thinks they have their own personalities and powers.
Wow. Using these ñatitas is a great example of how the indigenous Aymara beliefs mixed with Catholicism in Bolivia. They're treated with respect and familiarity, like they're powerful friends who can help the living.
Yeah, it's definitely not something you'd see at your local crystal shop or whatever.
Right.
But it makes you think about how different cultures view death and what happens after you die,
Absolutely. It challenges everything we think we know about what's sacred or forbidden. It shows how differently cultures around the world honor and connect with their dead.
Totally. Okay, now let's travel to a totally different kind of market. A South African witchcraft market in Johannesburg. This one's all about traditional healing, but with a bit of a twist. We'll dive into that in part 2 of this deep dive.
Oh, I can't wait.
Welcome back to our journey through witchcraft and folk magic. It feels like we've gone everywhere, from that crazy Sonora witches market in Mexico City to those spirit rituals in Brazil. We even saw those ñatitas in Bolivia.
It's been pretty wild so far.
It has. And now we're just outside Johannesburg, ready to step into a South African witchcraft market. This source you gave me is really interesting. It's this mix of traditional healing and this market vibe that's both cool and kind of creepy.
Yeah, this market, the way it is in the video, is like this mini version of all the different ways people approach healing and spirituality all around the world. It makes you rethink what you think a pharmacy or a doctor's office should be like.
Right. It's definitely not your average shopping trip. This filmmaker, Arab, actually took precautions before going in, like leaving his valuables behind and using a burner phone.
Oh, wow.
It gives you a sense of how risky it feels to go into this kind of hidden world.
It really does. It shows how mysterious these markets are and how much people are drawn to the unknown. It's kind of like that whole dark tourism thing where people want to see places and experience stuff that's outside their comfort zone, things that are kind of dangerous or taboo.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And once he's inside, the market is just packed with all these ingredients they use in traditional healing practices. Dried herbs, animal parts like lion fat and hyena heads, and then these talismans for all sorts of things.
Yeah, the animal parts especially can be really shocking for people who aren't used to these traditions. But it's important to remember that these practices come from really old belief systems where animals represent power and healing energy.
I get that. It'd be easy to be grossed out or judge it, but I think it's important to try and understand the culture and what they believe before you. Freak out.
Exactly. You have to be sensitive to other cultures. It's about understanding that different cultures have different ways of interacting with nature, and how we see things is shaped by how we were raised and what's normal in our society.
One thing I found really interesting was how the filmmaker was shocked and fascinated at first, but for the locals, It's just like any other day, another place to buy stuff.
Right.
It really shows how what seems strange or taboo to us can just be everyday life for someone else. It reminds us that our point of view is just that, our own point of view, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way to see things.
Yeah, I agree.
The filmmaker had this really cool conversation with one of the vendors. The vendor was like, hey, you got to respect and understand our ways, behave yourself, and you'll be fine. He even said, try to connect with our system.
That's awesome. It makes those who practice these traditions seem more human, you know? It reminds us that we're not talking about some abstract idea or stereotype. We're dealing with real people with their own beliefs, values, and ways of life.
It does. It also shows how important it is to be open-minded and learn about these traditions instead of judging them or thinking we already know everything.
For sure. It's all about understanding each other and realizing that we're all connected, even if we do things differently.
So we've seen both the good and bad sides of Brazilian magical traditions. Let's dive a little deeper into the history. One video you shared talked about how enslaved Africans used to hide their deities by pretending they were Catholic saints so they could keep their beliefs alive during slavery. It's pretty amazing they were able to keep their culture alive under such horrible conditions.
Absolutely. This mixing of religions, or syncretism, as we talked about, was super important for these traditions to survive. The fact that these enslaved Africans were able to be so clever and resilient is incredible. They found ways to honor their gods and keep their spiritual practices going, even when things were so bad.
It shows how powerful belief can be and how much humans need that spiritual connection, even in the darkest of times. It also shows that culture is always changing, adapting, and finding new ways to express itself.
Exactly. And what's so cool is that these mixed practices are so ingrained in Brazilian culture that even people who don't think they're following Umbanda or Candomblé are actually doing them. It shows you how deeply these beliefs run and how they affect daily life.
Yeah, it's like it's part of their cultural DNA. It's passed down through generations and woven into everything they do.
Now let's go back to Bolivia for a second and talk about that Vice interview with the brujo who does black magic. What really stood out to me was how he changed from doing white magic to messing with those darker forces. It's a story of transformation and how he was willing to explore all kinds of magic, even the stuff that seemed dangerous or forbidden.
I agree. It makes you question whether there's really a clear line between good and bad magic. His story shows that the lines can be blurred, and magic users often change how they see and practice magic over time.
Totally. And it's a good reminder that we shouldn't judge these practices too quickly. What might be considered dark in one place might be seen as necessary or even good somewhere else. It all comes down to what the magic user is trying to do and the culture they're in.
He said people come to him for all kinds of things. Love spells, revenge spells, even spells to make people sick or die. It's freaky to think about why people would want that kind of stuff, but it also shows how much humans crave things and how anxious they get, which sometimes leads them to magic.
That's a really good point. People often turn to magic when they feel helpless or desperate, like they need some control over their lives. It's a way of reaching out to a power beyond themselves, a way of changing things they can't change on their own.
And the way he uses nyatitas, those human skulls that are supposed to protect and grant favors, was super interesting. The fact that he gives them names and thinks they have personalities and powers shows a totally different way of thinking about death compared to what we're used to.
Yeah, using Atitas is fascinating because it mixes indigenous Aymara beliefs with Catholicism. It shows this deep connection to their ancestors and how they believe the dead can still help the living. It makes you think that death isn't always seen as the end. Maybe it's just a change to another world where the spirits of the dead can still hang out with us.
It really is a different way of looking at things. It makes you think about how different cultures deal with death and what they think happens afterward.
Absolutely. It reminds us that there are tons of ways to see and experience the world, and our own culture can sometimes make us blind to other possibilities.
Okay, remember that South African witchcraft market we talked about before? Well, get ready to enter a world where traditional healing meets a bustling marketplace. It's a place where the line between everyday life and magic gets blurry. We'll explore this fascinating and sometimes unsettling world in the last part of our deep dive.
Ooh, can't wait.
Okay, so welcome back to our deep dive. We've covered so much ground already, it's crazy. We started in that bustling Sonora Witches Market in Mexico City.
Yeah.
We went through those spirit-filled rituals in Brazil.
Uh-huh.
And we even saw those intriguing yatitas in Bolivia.
Right.
And now we're right on the edge of Johannesburg, ready to explore this South African witchcraft market. This source you gave me, it's really eye-opening, you know?
Yeah.
It's this blend of traditional healing and like this whole marketplace scene. It's both fascinating and a little unsettling.
It really is. This market, the way the video shows it, it's like this little example of all the different ways people heal and connect with spirituality all over the world. It makes you think differently about what a pharmacy or a doctor's office could be.
Right. It's like, so not your usual shopping trip, right? This filmmaker, Arab, he took all these precautions before even entering the market. He left his valuables behind, used a burner phone, the whole 9 yards.
Wow, really?
It gives you a sense of like the perceived danger, right? Like venturing into this kind of underground world.
It does. It really highlights how mysterious these markets are and how much people are drawn to things they don't understand. It's like that dark tourism thing.
Oh, yeah.
Where people want to see and experience things that make them uncomfortable, things that are maybe a little dangerous or taboo.
Right, right. And once inside, oh man, the market is just this like explosion of ingredients they use in all these traditional healing practices. We're talking dried herbs, animal parts like lion fat, hyena heads,
Whoa.
and then all these talismans for different purposes.
The use of animal parts especially, that's something that can be really hard to understand for those who aren't familiar with these traditions.
So
It's important to keep in mind that these practices come from these ancient belief systems that see animals as like sources of power and healing energy.
Right, right. I can see how it would be easy to, be grossed out or judge it. But I think it's really important to try to understand the culture and the beliefs behind these practices before you jump to conclusions.
Yeah, definitely. You got to be sensitive to other cultures. It's about realizing that different cultures interact with nature in different ways and that our own views are like shaped by how we grew up and what society tells us is normal.
It's true. What I found really interesting was this contrast, right? You see the filmmaker, he's all shocked and fascinated. But for the people who shop there, it's just another day, another place to get what they need.
It shows how what might seem strange or even forbidden to us is just normal life for someone else. It reminds us that our perspective is just that, ours, and it's not necessarily the right way to see things.
It's so true. The filmmaker actually had this really cool conversation with one of the vendors. And the vendor, he really emphasized the importance of respect and understanding. He was like, behave and prosper, try to link with our system.
It's so cool when these moments happen. It really humanizes the people behind these practices. Reminds us that we're not talking about like ideas or stereotypes, but real people with their own beliefs and values and way of life.
Absolutely. And it highlights how crucial it is to approach these traditions with like an open mind and a willingness to learn instead of judging or assuming we know everything.
Yeah, it's about understanding each other and realizing that we're all connected, even if we do things differently.
So we've explored witchcraft and folk magic from around the world, and it's pretty amazing how diverse these beliefs and practices are.
Yeah.
We've seen how it can be used to harm and to heal, how old traditions mix with new ideas, and we've learned how important it is to be thoughtful and understand different cultures when we look at this stuff.
Yeah. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? I think one of the most important things we've learned is that magic, in all its forms, shows us how much humans want to understand and control the world, how much we want to connect with something bigger than ourselves and find meaning in our lives.
That's a good way to put it. It's also clear that what we believe has so much power. It can shape our experiences and influence our choices in really big ways.
Yeah.
Whether or not we believe in these practices personally, we have to recognize how important they are to people and cultures all over the world.
Exactly. That's what makes exploring this stuff so fascinating. It pushes us to step outside our comfort zones, question what we think we know, and accept that humans are complex and diverse.
It's given us so much to think about.
It really has. Hopefully it's made you curious to learn more about all this. Remember, there's always more to learn, different perspectives to think about, and more connections to make.
So what stood out to you the most from all this? Are there any practices that, connect with your own beliefs? We hope you keep exploring this huge and fascinating world of belief and practice. Until next time.
See you then.